makes sense that you would look at the equity that you have in your existing home and think, I'll just take all of that money and put it towards my next home. But here's what a lot of Sioux Falls families don't understand at first, is that equity is not the same thing as having cash in hand. There's a bit of math that goes into penciling out how much equity you can actually take and utilize for that next home. In this video, I'll be covering all of the math so you understand what it looks like to sell your home and how much equity you'll truly have in the next one. I actually have a couple of calculators that you can download in the link below. Hopefully those will help you follow along with this process. After helping over 300 families buy, sell, and invest here in the Sioux Falls area, I can tell you that the buyers that feel best about this process are the ones who run the real numbers before they start shopping. So let's get into it. Here's a real example using an actual net sheet from right here in Sioux Falls. Let's say you have a starter home worth about $289,900, $290, and you still owe about $210,000 on your mortgage. On paper, that gives you about $80,000 in equity. But here's what actually happens. Total seller costs in South Dakota usually run around 9 to 10% of your sale price. In this example, taking $289,900 as our purchase price, we take into consideration all of the transfer expenses. You'll see those right here on our net sheet, including state deed fees, title and settlement fees, title insurance fees, because in South Dakota, we are a title state. You've got brokerage fees, and then sales tax on that commission, recording fees, preparation of deed, wire fee, and courier fees, and then a transaction fee. So in total, you have about $20,000 in transfer expenses. Also, in South Dakota, we have what's called tax proration that we have to give to buyers, because in South Dakota, we actually pay our taxes in arrears, meaning we are currently paying 2025 taxes. So we have to get that buyer current with their taxes so they get a credit. So in this situation, this home has about $4,000 of taxes each year. So in thinking about the time frame, you kind of look at it per day, how much taxes, and then prorate it out. So you have about $4,000 worth of tax proration to give to that buyer. So when you do the math, you're taking $20,000 in fees, $4,000 in that tax proration. So you have about $24,000 in transfer fees. And I know, believe me, that sounds like a lot, but we're going to talk a little bit later about the flip side of you being the buyer and the benefits of that. We had $80,000 in our head that we had in equity, but at the end of the day, we actually have $55,000 to utilize for equity to use towards that next purchase. That's a $24,000 difference, and honestly, it's very normal. So the good news is that it's not random. It's definitely something we can prepare for. So when you consider realtor commissions between 5.84% and 6%, and then about 3.27% in all of those transfer fees, we have a really good idea of how much equity you're going to be able to take to that next home. I like to walk my clients through this process early on as we're thinking about what we want to list that property for. Sometimes it makes sense for us to start from the bottom up of this net sheet. If there's a certain net amount we need to target, then we're going to try to look at our comparables and see if that is reasonable. And sometimes when we do the math, it either makes sense or it doesn't. And when we're doing our figuring, we want to make sure we take into consideration what the market temperature is. We want to make sure that we price your home accurately, because homes that are priced accurately and show well definitely sell quicker, and you'll be on the market a lot less time. So as you can see, while as a seller, it does come with some costs, as a buyer, you actually benefit from this on the opposite side of things. So when you go to purchase your next home, there are definitely less costs involved. You're going to have to decide what you want to put down as a down payment. You're going to have some bank closing costs. You're probably going to pay for an inspection and give an earnest money deposit, but your auto out-of-pocket expenses as a buyer are definitely a lot more minimal than as a seller. So you get both sides of the coin because you're doing both consecutively. You're selling and buying around the same time. I recently worked with a young family who was wanting to relocate from Minnesota to South Dakota. So we chatted early on in the process about how much equity they may have in their home. I was able to refer them to a great agent in Minnesota. We worked through the net sheet there and we found out how much equity they had to use towards the purchase of their next home. Now, taking that number and going to a lender and really running the numbers to see what they were comfortable with, it opened their eyes to how much house they could really afford here in South Dakota. And they are thrilled with getting the amount that they did with multiple offers in Minnesota and taking advantage of a little bit more of a buyer's market here in South Dakota in our South Dakota winters. So best of both worlds for them. Once you know your real buying power, the next step is to make sure that that monthly payment actually feels attainable for you and your family. When you go and meet with a lender, they're definitely going to tell you what you qualify for. They're going to look at your income, your margins, but there's a really big difference between what you qualify for and what you're actually comfortable paying in a monthly payment. If you're a busy family and your kids are in sports and you have grocery bills and a car payment and things like that, you want to really make sure you sit down and go through your budget and make sure realistically what that monthly payment could look like is comfortable enough that you're not going to have to cut out the vacations, the family gatherings, the going out to eat every once in a while. You want to still be able to have a life and make sure that that payment is attainable. So you might be coming from a payment that's about $1,600 a month, going to a payment that's $2,400 a month. That's an $800 difference, and you wouldn't think that that's that big of a difference, but when you think about $800 less to spend on the things that you normally buy, that is kind of a big deal. So running the numbers, looking at your budget, making sure you're super comfortable with where all that lands so that you can move forward with confidence. There's one more piece of the puzzle that I want to talk about, and that's to make sure we talk about market pricing. We want to make sure that when we're working on that net sheet and finding a number that you're comfortable with the equity, we want to make sure that that number that we have to market the house at agrees with what's going on in the actual market. What we're seeing in our market right now is that the average seller is getting 96.3% of the asking price. So let's just say you're listing your home at $289,900, like we ran in the net sheet. When you take that and take it times that 96.3%, you're looking at probably more like $279,000 instead of full asking price. Now, if we market the property well, if we price it accurately from the jump, we might get 100% of asking, but I never want to plan for that because you just don't know how the market's going to react. There's another stat that's not super fun to talk about, and that's that 43% of sellers in our market actually had to reduce their price at least once before getting the house sold. What I continue to see is the homes that are priced right from the beginning usually do a lot better than the homes that are trying to price at a high and unattainable number. We don't want to be the ones chasing the market down. And I think that's why strategy matters so much. We're not just going to throw out a number that we're hoping we can get to. We're going to use comparable sales data, market information, neighborhood information, and we're going to use some really great marketing tactics to make sure that we can get you the best possible experience. So even though I want to make sure that all of our clients have a great experience and nothing ever goes wrong, we always want to make sure that we have a plan B in place. Not because I think something will go wrong, but if we have a plan in place, it's a lot less stressful if something comes up. So a few things that can happen during the transaction that would require a plan B is a contract falling through. In our market, we're actually seeing that happen more often than I care to admit. It's around 15.1% on a national basis that buyers are backing out of the sale due to inspections or financing or something like that. So unfortunately, it does happen, and we want to be prepared for that as well. Also, a home could come up that you fall in love with before you have your home under contract. So knowing if we have an option to do a bridge loan or something like that with a lender is really important too. This would be a great thing, but if you get an amazing offer right out of the chute and they want to close in a really quick timeline, and that wasn't part of our plan, we want to make sure we have some temporary housing options thought through, because of course we don't want to let a great offer go, but we also don't want to make you homeless either. By talking about these potential things up front and before things get started, you can really feel more comfortable going through the process, knowing that you do have these backup plans in place if one of those things should happen. So I hope that after talking through all of the equity piece, going through the net sheet, and knowing really what that bottom dollar is going to look like, having a backup plan in place, making sure that we have good marketing, you'll feel really confident going into the sale and purchase of your next home. Make sure that you check out that affordability calculator that I've got linked in the description below. And I know that a lot of people are concerned about the interest rates, where they're going, if they're going to drop. And the next video right here is actually me talking through with one of my lender partners why waiting for the interest rate to drop might not be the best plan. So check out that video, hit the like and subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video.